Good morning. Welcome back. My name is Master Yao, and we're once again doing the Master Yao Chronicles, or the Chronicles of the Journey of Master Yao. And to some extent, I'm hoping that it's going to be your journey as well, since we're not just telling the story about my development. We're also talking about what happened to a lot of the men around me and the journey that they started on as a consequence of what was going on at the time. So this is going to be a little bit different of a discussion, and we're going to ramble about here and there. We're going to try to make this chronicle interesting to you. This is episode number 3. So in the past, we talked about a concept called second puberty. In other words, we made the statement that most men do not complete puberty. And it's a true statement. I talk about that concept a lot in my book, Awakening the Master Feminine. So, as a result of men not completing puberty, there are certain parts of their reproductive system, certain parts of their energy self that never comes online. And most men today stay in this juvenile period of sexuality their entire life, which is a shame. I talk about this, my Jedi journey, my search for the extraordinary, the secrets, the unusual things. And so, I want to show you tonight a little bit deeper as to how this knowledge that I obtained affected my life and the men around me. So men can wake up more of this sexual DNA. And when they do, it can have some remarkable impact on so many aspects of their life. And tonight we're going to talk about 2 things: how it can impact on your relationship life and how it can impact on your sexual life. It's quite remarkable. And I'm going to have to show you as much as I'm going to have to tell you. It starts with the fact that men have 2 bodies. You have a cell body, your physical body, what people call the flesh. And to some extent, most people are familiar with that. Most are not so familiar with the second body, and it's called the energy body. Some people call it the astral body. It's very, very real. And in the movie, when they talk about the Force, of course it's a fictitious concept, but the Force itself is not fictitious at all. When we talk about this energy body, we're talking about the 7 chakras. Most of you have heard about chakras, Montauk, Chia, and that group. It's also, even more important, something called the auric field, and it extends out from your body about 3 feet, okay? And it's not an intangible thing. It's a very tangible thing. It's quite a thing that can be felt, can be seen, and we can definitely substantiate it's there. You can test it, you can measure it. Some people have strong energy bodies, some people have weak energy bodies. Just like your physical body, the energy body can get sick, and often does. It can malfunction, but it can do things that the physical body can't do. And the physical body can do things that the energy body can't do. What's really unusual is that when you start to develop your physical body, like lifting weights or exercise or whatever, it affects the energy body in a certain way. In fact, if you're lifting weights and you're not dealing with the strength of the energy body, there's a problem. And when the energy body starts to develop, for whatever reason, it tends to pull or impact the physical body. And if you're not aware of this, you can get off balance. In the movie The Star Wars, they talk about the Force, and you see the lightsaber and what they're doing in this, that, and the other. And, it looks very chic and powerful. And the truth of the matter is, the quantum field, which contains the actual energy world, the energy field, so to speak, is even more powerful than what they talk about when they talk about the Force. So there's three things that you can do with this energy field. Well, three things that we experiment with the most. There's probably things you can do with it I don't even know yet. But we're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about healing. We're going to talk about pleasure. And we're going to talk about brain function or consciousness. Because when you start to go through second puberty and you start to try to complete puberty, that's one of the things that really sticks out, is that one of the things that happens is it awakens a little bit the energy body, and it causes the energy body to have certain capacities. And some people develop this naturally, and they don't even know it. In most people, however, the energy body is not well developed. It doesn't do it has the potential, but because people don't even think about it, they don't know it's there, they don't try to use that potential. And much of this thing, when we talk about sexual advancement, is connected in the beginning to the energy body. When you wake up the energy body, it gives the physical body greater capacity. So we're going to focus tonight on the pleasure part of the sexual thing, this sexual energy. In a later episode, we're going to talk about the healing part. And in a later episode, we're going to talk about the consciousness part, or the enlightenment part, or how it can help you to change the way that your brain operates. And that's probably the most fascinating part, is how you can change your brain function to improve it, upgrade it, so to speak. Or the real thing is that it's coordinated better. That's the real thing that we want to say. The brain function becomes better coordinated. So in the 1990s, when I first started talking about these subjects, and I published the book of Monroe, which introduced tantric concepts, so to speak, the science of it. In the 1980s, Osho, who came here from abroad, really began to show people what could be done with Tantra. And that sort of sparked a new conversation. Tantra is not new. It goes back many centuries. But as I told you before, religion really has suppressed the knowledge of Tantra. It was never really something that the common man was exposed to much. People did not want that. It was too empowering. And it put too much of a highlight on sex. And for most of existence outside of indigenous cultures, sex has been a problem. It's caused more pain than pleasure, and it pushed people into a place where they started to act on their passions, and they did a lot of bad things. So, as I said before, the reaction of the religious leaders was, this sexual thing, let's just suppress it. We'll all be better off. And we don't want to talk about it, and we don't want people to explore the connection between sex and spirituality, whatever. Osho was kind of badgered and hindered a lot when he was here for a few years. And as a consequence of that, he left the country and went back overseas before he really had a chance to teach the science and the implications of sexual energy and the energy body and that type of thing, which was quite a shame. In fact, it was a great travesty of the last century. And other people had tried to introduce these concepts. Most of them never had a chance, if they knew it, to present the science of it. And when I did, in the Book of Mamara, it was met with a great deal of skepticism. And I guess we can understand that. When I first learned about these concepts, I was pretty skeptical myself. So, when we talk about pleasure, what you're going to see, and I'm going to show it to you, is that you can really connect with a woman in a physical way. And most people think that's the way to go. But if you connect with her in an energetic way, your energy field interacting with her energy field, there's a whole nother level of stuff that starts to happen. And even more importantly, when you connect with a woman via her energy field, it upgrades and changes your physical game. It changes your brain function. The thing that connects this energy body to the physical body is what is called the endocrine system, which is the system of glands. Your pineal gland, your thyroid gland, your thymus, your adrenal glands, and your gonads, your testicles, and your ovaries. These things are like bridges between the energy body and the physical body. And the reason that most people's thyroid and adrenals don't function as well as they should is because the energy side is not developed, which is a big secret of health and well-being that most people are not aware of. We talked about this a lot in Amamara, and how to balance and reconnect these things in such a way that your whole function, your whole performance is elevated. So before we get into this discussion anymore, I want you to see several short videos that show you the energy body working with the sexual energy in several different ways. The terminology is infusion, where the energy is brought into the core of your body and it does something there. And then the second phase of energy work is called circulation. And really this is a removal of blockages more than anything else. And as the energy begins to circulate, the side effect is something called arousal. Now, you know arousal as when people are visually looking at each other and touching and kissing, and erogenous zones are activated and people become aroused. But that's the juvenile aspect of arousal. True arousal, real arousal, is when both the energy body, the physical body, and the images sync up. True arousal is when the energy is circulating through the 12 acupuncture meridians, and they remove the blockages and bad memories, so that this energy, this sexual energy, is allowed freedom to get to the whole body, which most people are not aware of the fact that much of their body, physical body and the energy body, has disconnections, breaks, choke points, and that it hampers arousal tremendously in most adults today. So I hope you enjoy the videos coming up, and after that we're going to continue this discussion. After you get started and you're breathing and you're holding your diaphragm out, it's important then to try to feel her. Imagine that you got a spider web of energy all around her, connected to you, and you're trying to sense, like a radar, what's happening in her auric field while you're projecting. It's very important to be gentle, not to press too hard, and to not have negative thoughts in your mind when you're projecting. It's very important to be present. Try to feel as if she's the world. Try to be her, pretend like she's a universe and you're inside it. From time to time, clear the throat chakra. That helps her, anything negative that's happening to her that day, get it out, pull it out, and get the throat chakra to working better. Keep the diaphragm out. Keep a constant but not intense pressure on the spine. Just enough to make contact, not enough to make her uncomfortable. Always think about how comfortable she is on the table, or he is. Always think about them. Put yourself in their shoes. It's almost as if you're part of their nervous system. It's almost like you're an extension of them. You don't have to force the energy out. You just let the energy flow out as much as she can take. You let her take the energy, absorb the energy. You don't force the energy out. Hello, this is Master Yao. I just want to let you know that Tier 2 is not just a continuation of the Tier 1 program. It opens up a whole new vista for you. What makes Tier 2 so different from Tier 1. There are 3 components of Tier 2 that really set it apart from any of the Tantra system and really open up whole new areas of your ability to control energy. For instance, in Tier 2, we start talking about the physical world and how that affects the energy world, like your cell body and what to do with the cells to align them to the energy production. In Tier 2, we talk about hands-free orgasm, which is the hands-free projection table work. And therefore, because you are lacking in some of the mechanics and some of the constrictions of that, you're able to send more energy, control it more, and put more intelligence into the energy. This is a major help. Number 3, we deal with the activations. So we start activating the G-spot, the prostate, and this opens up the reflex map, lets more energy flow, and really changes the orgasmic profile. So those are the 3 main things that separate Tier 2 from Tier 1. And also, what we see is that the topics in Tier 2 really open up whole new areas of tantric ability. For instance, we talk about breast projection, we talk about seed retention, we talk about the brain dendrites and the subliminal programming that control your sexual parameters. All of this makes for a really exciting course. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video. Bye. So the ancestors going to help break through so that the energy can move past the blockages that used to be there. So we're just working, doing our thing, and if we get a little extra help, we don't need that. You can see the Native American energy right here, right there, right there. What we have right here, gentlemen, look at me. What we have right here is an alley, a portal. So we got mom, older daughter, younger daughter in succession. And what might happen is that ancestor energy might cascade down. So if that happens, don't worry about it. That's a little too much energy. Energy womb and the physical vagina. Let me say that again. The G-spot is not part of the reflex map in the vagina. It's located outside of the vagina, and it acts as a mediator, a supervisor, or something that causes, that is an ambassador between this world over here, this energy world, and your energy body and your spirit, and the physical world, specifically the vagina. And the main thing that it does is it governs the nitric oxide pathway, and it governs the vagina nervous system. It's a ganglia of nerves, a junction of many nerves from many different places, and it's located between the bladder and the vagina. Through the heart center in the breast, a woman has a natural ability to project energy out of her body into the field of the man. So the woman can project this energy out of her heart center into the positive pole of the male. In the auric field of the woman, her positive pole is the breast heart area, and it has a natural ability, once she's trained, to project this energy from her heart into her male partner. This is just one of the natural sciences, techniques that we teach in the Grand Trunk
Down
system.
into her spine. My hand is on her spine. This is the infusion portion of the work. She begins to feel the energy at this point in time and begins to become aroused. Then she can be sitting up, and then we normally have her laying down at that point. This is approximately 13 or 14 minutes into a session, and she is, moving out of the infusion phase into the circulating phase. The energy is circulating from the root chakra all the way up to the mouth area, and once it starts to move on its own, she becomes pretty aroused and pretty much involved in what's happening. When you continue this, they'll reach a point approximately 25 minutes into the session where they become orgasmic if they're not holding back too much.
Okay, you've seen a few examples of what we call table work, energy work. And the sessions that we were involved in, what you didn't see was that it takes probably 10 to 20 minutes to get the energy moving so that it's circulating. We didn't show you a lot of the harvesting phase because privacy issues and because it becomes so erotic that it looks more like it could even be deemed somewhat inappropriate for a video, and so we don't try to show that so much. That is something that we the people in the classes get to see and whatever, but we try not to go too far with that. In some of these sessions, what can possibly happen is quite extraordinary, especially when you get into the higher levels of the pure energy work, where we're probably 2 or 3 feet away from the model and projecting the energy solely in orbits, where we're orbiting the energy, circulating the energy. When we get to the harvest point, we pull all of the energy to 3 or 4 different points. Normally the ovaries, the breast, and then the vaginal clitoral area. And what you don't see, and we're going to talk about this more when we get to the healing phase, is the removal of energy. And so, and what we're doing here is we are allowing the person's energy field to expel negative memory patterns in the cells, in the groups of cells. We find these negative memories, especially in men, in the prostate, in the penis, in the thyroid area, the throat chakra area. In women, we find it especially in the ovaries, and oftentimes when we start removing that energy from the ovaries, the woman will cry. There will be moans of sadness, and then these are followed by periods of orgasmic activity in which the negative memories are replaced with pleasurable memories. It's an interesting thing to see. And when women and men have the same thing with the prostate, when women talk about the experience, they talk about in their mind seeing a negative event that is erased and replaced by like a fantasy event that is pleasurable. Sometimes we'll tell the men, when they're on the table, to imagine the negative event turning out differently. Or we'll tell the women to imagine that the negative energy that they felt about the events escaping them and being purged out. So that what's actually happening is those brain dendrite patterns are reordered, where certain portions of their life are associated with rejection or negative experiences, that these memories no longer haunt them. And so before you can get to the orgasmic sessions, normally it requires 2 or 3 healing sessions where the energy is moved through these blockages, these negative places that are stored up, over time. Much of it occurs in women during the teen years, when they don't have the optimal sexual experience. And some of it is not really sexual. It's when they were dating, or they had an abortion, or they even were in a situation where they were about to have sex and stopped because they were afraid of becoming pregnant. So they had a lot of fear. So these instances where you have the fear, guilt, shame, rejection, set up brain dendrite patterns that are literally blockages in their electrical field, in this energetic field, that disconnect one part of their body from another, one part of their energy field from another chakra, or one part of the acupuncture meridian is not is disconnected in a way. That's not completely accurate, but that's the best way to describe it. There's like a disconnect in that circuit, if you want to call it a circuit. So before a woman or a man, depending on who's working on who, can experience the energetic pleasure, in most cases they have to experience some healing first. In one of the episodes that we showed, we worked on the woman twice, and there was no orgasmic activity at all. In fact, at the end of it, she felt that it was unpleasant because she said she kept having flashbacks to a negative time in her life. And until these flashbacks stopped, the energy would not move through two of her meridians. The energy would just kind of like juck, and it wouldn't flow. And once the blockage was removed and that memory was modified, then in the third session, after 10 minutes of work, she went into a pattern of just a constant undulation and a constant orgasm that kept growing in intensity. We've had situations where men have been in a continuous orgasmic plateau for hour and 20 minutes. And 30 minutes is fairly normal. We're not talking about a pleasant arousal feeling. We're talking about an actual orgasmic plateau that the men maintained. Normally ending in ejaculation, but sometimes not ejaculation. Which the first time that a man experiences that, it can be very disconcerting. They don't really know how to take that at first. They're shocked because they didn't think that they could have an experience like that. And it's that point at which they start to realize that this connection of their energy body, their chakras and auric field, to their physical reproductive system and their acupuncture system has quite a different impact on them than just pure arousal by itself. And normally, when they finish the table work and the woman finishes her projection, they will connect with their girlfriend or wife or partner, and what they discover is that pure physical sex is very different now, and that they have removed the ceiling. They have their threshold of arousal is different, and the degree of arousal is greatly expanded. With women, it's even more dramatic because a lot of times they don't realize how much negative experiences and just negative thought patterns impede them, hinder them. And that when these thought patterns are removed, or better way of putting it is modified, the memory is modified, and they feel connected to their core energy self, that they feel they become aroused quicker, they're aroused more, and that their orgasmic pattern changes. And what we mean for the most part is that instead of a quick peak in orgasm, they have a slower buildup, and that the release it's not as intense. It's a lower level of intensity that's held for a much longer period of time. Then it stops. It builds up to a higher level and maintains that level longer, stronger, and it doesn't release. It just takes a break, the energy builds up, and then the level kicks up even higher. And it doesn't happen from one session, of course, but with training, teaching, education, and a change in their belief systems, it gradually transfers over into their bedroom experience. And I can tell you from my own personal experience that once a woman goes through the healing phase, which can take 2 to 4 weeks normally, and gets into the pleasure phase, the expanded pleasure phase, after 2 or 3 months of that, she enters a whole nother level of pleasure where she can have orgasms in different parts of her body, not even in the yoni, but the liver, the breast, the neck. They can feel it, the orgasm that happens outside of their body, in the field around them, and then builds and then invades the body in like a surge and causes a full body orgasm where they feel like they're having an orgasm all over. The important point to make here is that once they have these types of experiences, men and women, they have a deeper connection to the person that they're actually partnered with, that they're having physical sex with, and that their physical reproductive system changes, it upgrades. This is an interesting thing for most people to experience, where they begin to see that there is a remarkable change in their physical body, their physical nervous system, their brain neurochemistry, as a consequence of bringing more of their DNA online, bringing more of their energy body alive and active, and matching it, balancing it with their physical body, with their cells. And of course, when we get to higher levels, when we get to the tier 3 level and beyond, there's also something that happens to the cells themselves, so that the cells don't leak energy as much. That's the best way of putting it. But indeed, the cells start to have a different energy signature, a different energy pattern, and it allows people to lose weight. It allows people to improve their organ health, and as a consequence of the package, they gain the ability to heal not only themselves but other people. So it's very significant. For men, it appears so far at the level of development that most reach to, is the major thing that they say is that their health improves, and they feel more joy out of sex, because performance issues are not even a concern. And not just that, but that they are able to orgasm more than once, because there's no ejaculation unless they want it to. And that they can rotate between physical sensations and energy sensations. Now, if you've never experienced that, you don't know what I'm talking about, but it's like they're having one type of orgasm, and then they sort of stop that, and then they have a different type of orgasm, and then they come back and go back and forth. Now, women interpret this very, very differently, and it's very interesting the way the two genders differentiate this way. The women say that the best thing that they feel from this is the emotional connection to the man, that it's much deeper, And they like this a lot. They like this feeling of being really connected to the man on this higher level or lower level, however you want to look at it. They feel that they have a spiritual connection to the man that they felt was not possible before. Not because of a change in the man, but because of a change in them. Also, when a woman can have an energy physical combination orgasm, when the man stops making love to her, she doesn't stop. She can continue for 10 to 20 minutes after the man is done. And she can complete whatever it is that she was in the middle of. And that they report that their dreams after that change significantly. That there's more color in the dreams, there's more definition in the dreams, they have more control of the dreams, they feel more awake in the dreams, and when they wake up, they just have a different feeling altogether about the whole experience. In the 90s when we first taught this, it was mostly private classes, very small private groups. And because most people felt that this whole concept of the force, the energy field, was a myth. And we had a very difficult time convincing people otherwise. But once we started showing people and letting them experience this and teaching them how to do it themselves, they had a whole nother take on the entire experience. They went back and looked at their lives and saw it in a completely different way. And the strange thing is that it decreased desires for infidelity, for playing around. It increased fears, it increased shame. Because through the energetic sexual energy, it's much easier to avoid pregnancy if that's not what you want. And if you are somewhat infertile or impotent for the man, it dramatically changes that. And so it gives you more control. And then of course, once you get past the healing phase, and then you get into the healing phase normally takes about 3 weeks, if the person doing the projection is very experienced. And then you get into the pleasure phase, and that lasts, you get into higher levels of it after about 2 months of doing a session once a week. But of course, when you've been doing this kind of work for 4 or 5 months, then something else altogether unexpected begins to happen, where the brain dendrite patterns begin to change, and the neurochemistry of the brain begins to alter, and you're capable of a type of enlightenment or inspiration or expansion of consciousness where you just start to think a little differently, a lot differently. And you just start to see yourself, and you start to see the world, and especially the relationship world, in a much more optimistic way. So, people don't believe things unless they see them, of course. And that's a shame. We've taught hundreds of people these techniques, and thousands of people have been able to have the experiences through my students and myself and the other Tantra schools that have come to my school to learn and improve their process. And so, tens of thousands of people have been exposed, as when you consider the healing part, tens of thousands of people have had this experience now. The general public is not aware of this revolution that's going on. In the 90s, there were several of us who were teaching these methods. the Grand Trine system that I founded is probably the most advanced of the systems, and because it teaches the science as well as the practice. But you know, it's a very small niche group of people when you consider the millions of people in this hemisphere. But they have started a revolution that's not going to stop anytime soon. And I think, without a doubt, in the next 5 to 10 years, more people are going to be exposed to this knowledge, to this science, to this practice. I would encourage all men to at least investigate and research the things that I'm saying in this video. Because, you know, it's like Harriet Tubman said, you know, well, she freed thousands of slaves, you know, through the Underground Railroad. But she said she could have freed tens of thousands if they had just known that they were slaves. If they had an awareness that escape was possible and a different life was possible. But most of them did not. And it's the same thing with relationships. The great shame is that we have to show people to them and have them interview past students or past patients, clients, before they even start to consider that there are alternative techniques and sciences out here. We've become so centered in a dysfunctional sexual pattern that many people feel comfortable there with their dysfunction and resist considering that some of these things are possible. And what I want you to understand is that this sexual piece is just one side of it. The healing thing, we've done much more in terms of the healing work than with the pleasure work, of course. And with the brain, with the abilities to coordinate and modify brain chemistry, the impact of this on the quality of life is just off the scale. You just have no idea. And so I encourage people to not be so narrow in their view, not to be so set and fixed in what they've come to believe. You don't know what you don't know. And before it's proven to you, before we can show you, first you need to have an open heart, an open mind, and the ability to at least consider alternative lifestyles, alternative ways of relationships, alternative ways of helping maintain your health. In some of the things we're going to share with you in the Jedi Chronicles, in the Chronicles of Master Yao, they're going to sound fantastic. They're going to sound extraordinary and unbelievable. And to some extent, we don't blame you. But on the other hand, we encourage you to really keep an open mind to what we're sharing with you in the Chronicles of Master Yao. It's so many people now who opened up and had a different type of an experience and changed their life as a consequence. Some of the things we're going to tell you have nothing to do with sex, have nothing to do with energy, but you'll still have a skeptical approach to it because it's just not something people talk about a lot. But the men who were around me, as from my 20s to my 40s, when most of this took place, were profoundly impacted by it. And some of them went on to teach and do themselves. And with the life the way that it is today, it's difficult. And therefore you need all the tools you can get. Some of the things we talk about, the radar, the compass, the way that we look at the natal persona versus the counterfeit personality, the house of the man, the house of the woman, the rituals that we talk about. We haven't talked about them yet, but we're going to. And some of the other things that sound relatively simple. Open your mind up to consider these things. And open your mind up to expanding your life, to improving the quality of life, to rise above mediocrity, to understand that it's very, very possible to have exciting relationships that don't have negative drama in them, that it's possible for men to move into a space where racism doesn't affect them as much, where these gender issues, this impasse between men and women, don't affect them as much, where they're capable of being in crisis situations and being able to see alternative solutions that most people don't see. My name is Master Yao, and I had a very different adulthood. And I'm sharing some of these chronicles with you so that you can see what myself and some of the men around me experienced and how they benefited from it and how I benefited from it. I've enjoyed sharing this with you. I look forward to the rest of the chronicles. We're going to go for, we're going to do quite a few videos. And if you think what we've shown you so far is interesting, let me tell you, my friend, you haven't seen nothing yet.